This da, as they say in my part of the world, and welcome from me, Martin Smith, aka Cornish Grandad, to my YouTube channel. I trust you're well and interested in learning about Blender and understanding how the interface works. In this session, we will obviously cover the interface, which first looks quite complicated, but once you understand the basics, it's fine. And then we will move into creating objects, adding them, rotating them, moving and scaling them, and creating this simple looking bear as our first project, and we'll render the final result. This will give us the foundation then to move on to creating a more interesting scenes. When you first open up Blender, you'll be faced with a screen that looks something like this. Yours might be slightly different. You'll understand why by the end of this session. But there's a total 11 different sections, and you're watching a video and they're talking about this particular area and you're going, I don't know where I'm looking. By the end of this session, you'll understand what each of those sections do. So let's look at them. View these sections one at a time. As you'd expect, in the top left-hand corner is the menu bar. Most applications have them. You've got the file, edit, window, help, as you'd expect to see. Clearly render is something unique to computer graphics programs. Next you have what Blender calls workspaces. So they are screen layouts that are pre-configured to help you do particular tasks. So if you're on the video editing one, you'd have a video editing bar. If you're on a sculpting one, you'd have sculpting tools, that kind of thing. We happen to be in the layout workspace, which is laid out as we can see at the moment, which is the default when you first start Blender. Top right, you've got two options, which are scenes and layers. We don't use those very often, so we'll skip those and move on to something else. There are two panels which you can turn on and off within the main window, and the first one we can look at is the transform panel. You can hide or unhide this with the letter N. Why it's the letter N, I've got no idea. But here you can see the default object in the middle is the cube, and it's located in position 0x, 0y, 0z. It's got no rotation applied to it, and the scale is 1. We have a useful panel called the status bar. Status bar, as you'd expect, will have a timeline if things are taking a while, tell you how quickly they're progressing. But it also shows you what operations are available for the action you're currently doing. Very useful when you first start up because you can't quite remember. Glance down here and you go, I can do that. This is the key I need to be hitting to do that. So very useful area. The other panel we spoke about, similar to the transform panel, is the tabs panel, which you can hide or unhide with the letter T. At least that makes sense. What appears on here depends upon which of the workspaces we're in. So we're currently in layout workspace, so we have cursors, rotations, scales, move buttons. If you're in sculpting, you'd have loads and loads of different brushes to choose from, for example. So these sections are always available, whether you've hidden them or unhidden them, they're always available. But the others depend on the workspace you're in. So let's look at those. So the header depends on the workspace, and it contains normal commands. So as we're in the layout, we've got view, select, add and object options, and some other buttons above that, which we can go through later. So we've looked at the standard windows that are always available. Now let's look at the areas that are available when you're in the layout workspace, which is the default workspace when you first enter Blender. Collections, which is like a filing cabinet system, so it keeps your data organized when you've got multiple objects, and if you don't do it, you'll just get yourself so confused. So it's an organization area, collections. Properties panel. At the moment it's saying exactly the same as the transform panel, but there are other options, buttons at the sides as you can see, and then what information is displayed will change. And then we have the main panel, which is called the 3D viewport. You'll spend 90% of your time in here. This is where you do all your modeling and manipulating of objects, coloring them, shading them, texturing them, whatever. That's in the 3D viewport. So I suggest you pause the video, try the various workspaces and see what they look like. Turn the transform and tabs on and off and see what they're doing. Just have a look at these various buttons and see if you can make any sense out of these. Just get yourself familiar with clicking on the various tabs, areas, workspaces, etc. And then when you finish that, we'll actually go and move, manipulate and add some objects. So when you start a new Blender document, you'll end up with something looking like this. Yours might look slightly different, don't worry about it, you'll understand why in a minute. But we start off with the default cube. If I left click on it, then it gets a yellow box around the outside and says that's the cube. You've got the grid floor, you've got your x-axis, which is the red one, which is x, as you can see here. You've got your y-axis, the green one, and though it's not displayed on this setting, you can set it up. I don't bother. You've got the Z, which is the blue. Now I can scroll my move around the scene just by grabbing hold of this gizmo. If I want to go straight to the x-axis, I can click on that, and you can see I can't see the red line anymore because it's actually coming straight out towards my eyesight. There we are. If I want to look at the y-axis, etc., I can move around my scene like this. Okay. The other way of moving around the screen is just to hold the middle mouse button down. Oh, I forgot to mention, down here I've got my screencast tools. So if I click, say, the letter T comes up, letter N comes up. And if I hold down the middle mouse button, you can see it appears. So this tells you what my keystrokes are, in case I forget to tell you, which I probably will. Okay, the other way of moving around the screen is you hold down the middle mouse button, as my screencast tool shows, and you just move your mouse around the scene. There we go. If I actually want to zoom in or in out, that's the scroll wheel backwards or forwards. Now, if you haven't got a scroll wheel on your mouse, I strongly recommend you get one. You can cope without, but it's extremely tedious and frustrating. I've tried. So that's middle mouse button, zoom in or out. And if you want to actually move your vision up or down, you hold the shift and then the middle mouse button and then move your mouse. And as you can see, my object's moving around the scene. Now let's say we, rather than just, there's two things I should have mentioned. You've also got a light in your scene, which I can click on. Won't worry about that for the moment. And this weird looking object is actually the camera. So when you render your image, it's as if you're looking through the camera. So I'll re-highlight my cube with my left box. Let's say rather than just me moving around the scene, I want to be able to move my box around the scene. So there's a number of ways of doing this. One is this move option here. If you can't see this panel, then that's what the letter T does. It hides or unhides that panel. So if you can't see it, press T and make it appear. If you want to move, also I tend to call this G for grab. It's easy to remember. If you click on that, you end up with this little gizmo with arrows on the end. If I grab, say, the green, which is the y-axis, if you remember, it says Y up here, then I'm moving my cube backwards and forwards along the green axis. I do the same with the X or the Z, or I could move it freely in any direction I like just by grabbing the white, and I can move it around. Okay, so that's the move or grab option. So an alternative way of doing that is just by pressing the letter G, and I can freely move it around. I will try and remember to use the gizmo, but actually it's a lot quicker to use the shortcut key G. If I want to move just on the Z axis, I'll go G followed by Z, and then it goes up or down. and if I do say G and Y, it'll just move on the Y axis. There we go. Another thing you might want to do is be able to rotate the actual object you're looking at. So there's a number of ways of doing this. The first one is this option here, which is called rotate, and you get a different shaped gizmo with these kind of circular lines around it. So if I grab the green or Y axis, it's just going to rotate around that line there, the Y axis. Okay. If I want to rotate it just around the Z axis, likewise I grab that and it's just rotating around that vertical axis. And you can see how much I'm rotating. If you look at the top left hand corner, you can see 56, 82, etc. So a way of jumping this, so I can just jump in 5-degree increments. If I hold down the control button and then mouse click on this, you can see it's jumping up in 5-degree increments, which is very useful. If I want to freely rotate, I just grab the white and I can rotate it in any direction I like. Probably get myself very confused. Now, the keyboard shortcut for doing this is logically R for rotate. So R, and there's my free rotate we just had. If I want to rotate just around the X axis, it'd be R and, you've guessed it, X. Up comes the X axis and it's rotating just around that. And if I want to rotate it, say just around the Z, it'd be R and Z. Now let's say I want to make my cube larger or smaller. I have an option here, it says scale. And you get the gizmo similar to the move, but instead of having arrows at the end, you have these little cubes at the end. So I want to scale it just on the Y axis. I'll grab that. Just on the X axis, grab that. I want to make it a bit smaller, say, grab that. If I want to do it in all directions at the same time, I just grab the white. The shortcut for scale is logically S. So this is my free rotate, my free scale I should say, in any direction. When I'm happy, just click and let go. If I want to do it just in, say, the X axis, you've guessed it, it's S and X. Or make it perhaps a bit smaller, and the Y, S and Y. So, very logical. There is a slight variation on this. If I want to scale it on on the X and the Y axis, but not the Z, I can do S, Shift and Z, so not Z. You can see I've got my X and Y axes appear, and you can see I'm making it bigger and smaller, but I'm not changing the Z axis at all. So that's a very useful option. There are two other combinations that are very useful to remember. One is number pad 1, which is the front view, and number pad 7, which is the top view. I don't have a number pad on my laptop, so I use a pie menu, and there are two ways of getting exactly the same pie menu up. There's the single quote button on the right hand side of the keyboard. If I press that, you end up with this pie menu, and I can select, say, top, or I can do single quote and say select right. The other way of doing that is obviously single quote and T, as you see, T is underlined, exactly top, single quote R will be right. The other key that does exactly the same pie menu is the one, I don't know what it's called, it's below the escape button at the top left hand corner normally of a pad, exactly the same menu, just a different key that does it. Depends which one you want to choose. Okay, so we now know how to move around. We've just covered off the different view options at the top when we looked at the layout. It's worth looking at those next. We've got the wireframe view, as you see, it looks like a wireframe cube. The normal view mode we're in is called solid view. If I leave my mouse over there for long enough, it should come up with the word solid. It's not going to, there it goes. Display in solid mode. And then we've got two others. One is shading, which is a quick way of colouring your object. We have no colours assigned to object at the moment, so we'll do that next. And the other one is render view, which tends to take longer, especially if you're in the highly detailed cycles render view. So most of the time you'll be playing with these three and not with that one. But let's colour our object so we know what to do. You've got this button here, which is, if I leave my cursor over, it says Materials Properties. I always think it looks like a radioactive symbol, but hey ho. I click on that. I come up with this colour thing. I can select a base colour. Doesn't matter what, choose anything you like. That's quite a deep red. If I want to make it darker, I could do that. If I want to make it paler, I could do that. Move over it, circle my colour wheel. Choose whatever colour you like. Okay, so we now have a coloured object, which we can also see in rendered view. I happen to have a background on mine. You probably won't have on yours. Back to solid view. So we have now moved around our scene. The next thing we need to do is we are going to create a new Blender object, and we are going to create a teddy bear, which will look something like this. So we're going to create a new object. We file, new, general. Don't want to save that because we just played with that. And here is our original scene with our cube. Okay, so we have a cube to start with. Not bad shape for a teddy bear, I think. So we will work on this one. So what I'm going to do is I want it slightly wider in the x-axis. So I've clicked on it. I'm going to scale by clicking that one, and I'm going to scale. Sorry, by clicking on that one, just in my x-axis a little bit, just to make it a bit wider, a bit more teddy bear shaped. Great. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add a neck below this. So here's where we add our new shapes. So add, mesh. What's nearest to a neck shape? Probably a cylinder. So let's create a cylinder. As you can see, it's been created at the origin point, right at the center. I want to move this down, so I'm going to click move or grab, and I'm just going to scale it down so it's slightly into the cube, so I don't want a gap between the two. So there we go. We now have a neck for our teddy bear. Right. So I want to add some ears. So the easiest way of looking to do the ears is if we're looking at it from the front. So let's go to front view. There we go. There's the front of our teddy bear. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and I'm going to put a couple of ears here. And I think the easiest shape to use to start with is a torus. So we can add mesh torus. There. Now it's immediately created a torus in the center, and it's lying edge onto us. We can rotate it now, or we can go down here, and this box will disappear as soon as we do anything else. It will. This is our torus. It's probably about the right size, but it needs to rotate around the x-axis. So we can do it here if we want to. So we can just put a 90 in there. And that's actually, I think that's a bit big, don't you? We could scale it once we've finished, or we could do it now. So let's make it 0.7. That's a bit more ear shape, ear size, I think. So now we can grab this. So we've got the move tool already on. We can grab our move it up on the Z, move it across the X. I noticed that window we had down here that allowed us to amend it has now disappeared. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to have an inner ear. I don't want this hole in the middle of my ear. So I'm going to add a new object, and I think probably the best one would be a circle. So here's my circle. You can't see at all because it's lying flat on, so let's rotate it so we can see how big it is. So that would be 90 degrees on the x-axis, and it's got a hole in the middle, and I don't really want a hole in the middle. There's nothing in there, so I want to fill that. I'm going to fill that with let's do a triangle fan. There we go. Now you can see it. Far too big. Let's make it smaller. So 0.5, do you reckon? Was that too small? Let's find out. Let's move it up. I'm going to move it up so that the center point is on the top edge of the face. Move it across. Actually, that looks spot on to me. There we go. We have a representation of an ear. Right, now I want to duplicate this. So I can click on the inner ear and duplicate that, but actually I want to do the two together, so I'm going to do Shift and click, as you do in many applications. So I've got them both selected. The one that's last selected has got the yellow on the outside, the previous one's got the orange, but it tells you both selected. If I right click now, there's an option here which says Duplicate Objects. So there we are, there's my duplicated objects, and I can just slide this across until likewise that center point's on there. So I've now got two ears for my teddy bear, exactly the same size, which is kind of what I wanted really. Right, so now I think it's probably about time we started colouring this in. Actually, should we make this little neck a bit smaller? It looks a bit big to me. Let's scale that down, and I want to just scale it in a little bit. I think that looks more neck size. So let's create a teddy bear colour. So selecting one of the objects, we're going to create a new colour. Select a brown. I think perhaps a bit darker, so pull mine down. There we go, that's my teddy bear colour. You can have a different colour, doesn't matter. Right, and let's start. We ought to name things as we go along, so let's call this Bear Brown. Sounds like his surname really. Now nothing's happened, it's still grey. Oh, I remember, because I'm looking at it in solid view rather than preview mode. So let's go into preview mode. There we go, we've got a brown teddy bear. I guess the face should be the same colour. So come across to our panel over here, click on this little icon here, and there's our Bear Brown. Okay, so he's gone brown, brilliant. And the ear should be brown as well. And so should the other one. I would like the inner ear to be a slightly lighter colour. They often are in teddy bears, aren't they? So let's create a new colour. Similar brown, but I want mine a bit lighter, a bit more yellowy. There we go, that'll do. So let's name that Bear Light Brown. And then how do I make this inner ear go yellow? Remember, I click on that, and there's Bear Light Brown. Okay, so we have a basic teddy bear shape. Really lacking any features. It needs eyes, nose and a mouth. So let's start off with a nose. We're going to add a new nose, and we're going to add a cone, I think. Oh, that's far too big. Let's make that smaller. We could have done it in that panel down there, but in fact that was a bad idea, Martin. So let's make a nose. So we can add mesh. The nearest thing to a nose I think is probably a cone. We'll make it a bit smaller, I think, don't you? So let's go one size. So let's just scale this down a bit. Right. Now I need to be able to move it to the front. So the easiest way is to look at the side. So go side view. We'll change that to grab mode. We'll grab it and we'll move it just so the apex of the triangle is on the front of the face. Let's see what that looks like. So let's get a front view. Hey, I quite like that. Colour the nose, probably pale yellow again. Yeah, pale yellow, I think. There we go. Got a nose. So now he needs a mouth. So I'm going to add a mouth. I'm going to use another torus, I think. Right. Let's look at that from the side. We're going to, we're already in grab mode, which is great. Let's move it down a little bit. Let's move it forward a little bit. I think I need to scale it down, so I'm going to hit the scale button. And we'll have it like that, and we can move forward a little bit more. I wonder if my nose is a little bit big. What do you reckon? I'm going to scale that down a bit. I think, yeah, I think I'm going to scale that down a bit. So I'm in move mode, not scale mode. There we go. Right, colour for my lips, I guess need to be red, don't they? So let's create a new colour. Let's call it Bear Lips. Let's make it kind of nice reddy colour, quite vibrant red. Now lips should be a bit shinier than the rest of it. And we've got this thing called roughness, which is the obverse of shininess, and let's just drag that down to make the lips a bit shinier. There we go. So I think we now need a couple of eyes. So let's add, the easiest, closest thing to an eye is a UV sphere. Wow, that's a bit big. Let's make that quite a bit smaller. What, 0.25? And let's go in side view. We need to be in move mode, grab mode. We can pull that forward, and I'm going to get it so that the center point is on the front face again. Move it up. Let's look at front view. Oh, it's got one big eye. It's a bit of a cyclops, so we'll move the eye across a bit, and I reckon down a bit, something like that. Perhaps a little bit bigger. So let's get a size and just make it a little bit bigger. Sorry, size. There we go. So, that needs to be pulled in a bit now, so we'll move it in likewise so that center point is on the front face. There we go. Right. So we need a new material for the eye, which I guess should be white. So let's call it bare pupil. No, sclera I think is the correct term, isn't it? There we go. White's right. It needs to be shinier though, doesn't it? So let's make it a lot shinier. So that's the roughness one here, and let's pull it down. Make it nice and shiny. Now we can also make it smoother. So if we right click on it, there's an option called Shade Smooth, which make it look nice and shiny. There we go. So now we need to create a pupil for eye, because he looks like he's staring blindly at me, and I don't like that. So we're going to add a mesh. We'll add another sphere. This one needs to be smaller again, so let's go 0.15. Might be too small. We'll have a look in a minute. With the move tool on, which is there, we can pull it along. We can pull it up, something like that. Let's go to front view and kind of get it central. I think it needs to go in a bit. It's a bit boggle-eyed at the moment. Something like that. It's a bit hard to see because you've got white on white. So let's give him black pupils. So we'll add a new material. Let's call it bare pupil. And we want this to be black. We want it to be quite shiny again. So take the roughness right down. And let's do right click and shade smooth. That looks slightly off angle on mine. I don't know about yours, but hopefully you've done yours better than me. Let's move it better. So now we can copy this. Do you remember? So we click one, shift and click the other. Right click. We've got duplicate objects. I'm just going to return because I don't want to move it. I want to leave it there. So I've actually got two objects, one on top of the other. I've got my move tool on, so I can just move it across to there. If you moved, it doesn't matter, you'll just have to manually place it, but it's easier just to accept it and then move it afterwards. So look, we have a representation of a teddy bear. Not bad. If I look through my camera, there's my teddy bear. That's the little camera symbol up there. Click it again and go back to normal view. So, I have a teddy bear. It'd be nice to put it on a bit of a plane so we can see it better. So we're going to put it on a bit of a grassy plane. So we're going to add a new object, a mesh, a plane. There's the plane appears, far too small. Let's make it a lot bigger. Let's make it 20 meters square. There we go. It's nice and big. Right, that's cutting it in half. So we need to move it down so it's about there. Let's make that green. Oh, greeny grassy colour. There we go. Look through our camera again. There we go. We've got a teddy bear. So we can now render this image. So render image. If you wait for a little bit, then the screen will disappear, and here we've got our teddy bears appeared. You can see a nice shadow because of where the light was. We didn't play with the light. You can see most of his face in shadow, but you've got a bit of highlights appearing here, and you've got a shadow here, and we've got basically our shadow. So we can save this anywhere you like. If you, so image, save. It'll ask you where we want to save it. I'm going to save mine on my desktop just because I am. Okay, and you want to shut this window down, you do it as per normal. If you want to save this one, let's give it a name, file, save, decide where you want to save it, give it a name at the bottom and save your file. I hope you have enjoyed and learned something from this tutorial on the interface and the basic movement within Blender. And if you have, then please support this channel by clicking like. And if you want to see more material like this, then please subscribe. Keep in touch and I hope to see you soon.